and has the potential to halt or reverse Uganda's development trajectory. Most of these climate issues are human-induced through activities like reducing forest cover, rapid expansion of farming activities, industrial pollution, and so many more. Uganda is currently experiencing significant climate change impacts, including changing weather patterns, dropping water levels, and increased frequency of extreme weather events like floods, as well as drought, whose socio-economic impacts make communities very vulnerable. It's against this background that we are having today's dialogue on human-induced climate change and possible remedies, brought to you by Uganda Law Society. In studio, I'm joined by Mr. Isaac Atkunda, Uganda Law Society Honorary Secretary of the Executive Council, and Mr. Moses Okwalinga, Chief Executive Officer, Uganda Law Society. My name is Idris Matusegawa, and you can join the conversation on our social media platforms, that is NTV Uganda, or look out for myself, Idris Matusegawa, on Twitter at Idris Matu, and tell us, be part of the conversation. Join and tell us what can be done to combat climate change. Gentlemen, good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Idris.
I will start with Moses. Moses, you're the CEO of ULS. Just tell us about what you do at the society and a little bit more on the mandate of ULS.
Okay, thank you very much, our host.
Yes.
Good morning, viewers. I bring greetings from the Law Society. I've already been introduced. My name is Moses Okwalinga. I lead the day-to-day operations at the Uganda Law Society. And the Law Society is basically the National Bar Association. It's created by an Act of Parliament of 1956 with several mandates, which include, among others, promoting the rights and promoting the legal practice for the legal profession. So almost all the lawyers in the country are members, save for people in the public service and civil service. As well as we have other mandates enhancing the rule of law and good governance. Then we also have a mandate to be an advisor to government on issues of the law. The three arms of government. That's why you occasionally see us coming out, our president coming out with statements, positions on the law, basically in fulfillment of our mandate as an advisor to government. We also have a mandate to enhance access to justice. That's basically bringing justice closer to home. And under that, we run the biggest legal aid project in the country, non-state, as well as the National Pro Bono Scheme. Maybe I'll ask my colleague to supplement.
Mr. Isaac Atkunda, what are your roles at ULS? For those who do not know.
Good morning, Mr. Idris.
Good morning.
Good morning, our viewers. I've already been introduced. Isaac Atkunda is my name. I'm the Honorary Secretary of Uganda Law Society. I'm also the managing partner at Credo Advocates, and I'm glad to be here.
We are glad to have you.
Thank you. Our CEO has highlighted what Uganda Society is all about.
Yes.
Most often we use the abbreviation ULS.
ULS.
So now, ULS is an association of lawyers in Uganda. It is established by an Act of Parliament, and it has a wide mandate to its membership and also to the society of Uganda. And among its core mandate is to assist the government and all other stakeholders in matters affecting legislation and administration and practice of law in the country. Then also, Uganda Society advises government on matters relating and incidental to the law. So basically, Rule of Law Week, the concept emanates from that core mandate of ULS. And it is in this week when we are observing our Rule of Law Week, and it will be climaxed by a symposium on Friday, where we shall have eminent people attending and discussing the concept of rule of law vis-a-vis the environment. And along the way, we shall explain to you why we chose this specific topic as our topic for Rule of Law Week. Thank you.
Okay, Moses, I'll come to you on that. The annual Rule of Law Week, happening from 10th to 14th October. The theme, very interesting. When someone hears Uganda Law Society, they might not associate you with climate change. Why this theme?
Thank you, our host. Those questions have been asked. I'll give a background of our constitution. Yeah. Our constitution has chapter 4, which has the Bill of Rights. And the Bill of Rights, one of the basic rights of Ugandans is to live in a clean and healthy environment. Yeah. So when you ask, that is climate change a rule of law issue, we have a mandate to enhance and promote the rule of law. Now, in our Bill of Rights, one of the rights is the right to a clean and healthy environment. And now the environment affects all of us. You've seen whatever is happening, from the floods in Mbali, the discussion around ECOP, the deforestation, the heating climate, the heating temperatures during the evenings, all that is climate change. So we believe that climate change has an effect on our right to a clean and healthy environment, which is a concern for all of us. So this year, we deliberately dedicated our Rule of Law Week to climate change. And you'll ask, why October? October is our Independence Month. So we all extract the whole concept of rule of law from our independence, our mother constitution, which is still embedded in the 1995 constitution. So for us, October has been a key month where we discuss rule of law issues, because it's also the month when we got independence. So we believe, as the Law Society, that the rule of law, that climate change is a key component of our right to a clean and healthy environment, and it's a discussion we need to have with the public, with the membership, with all stakeholders, including government.
So between now and Friday, when the symposium is going to happen, what are some of the activities we should expect?
Maybe to first highlight on what Moses has just mentioned. There is a concept called environmental rule of law, and it was adopted by UNEP in 2013. And the rationale behind it is that a violation of environmental law has potential to undermine sustainable development, rule of law, and good governance, which play an essential role in preventing violations. So the concept of rule of law applies to the environment in as far as you must use the laws, the regulations to protect the environment. The regulations are there, the laws are there, the rules are there. How are they enforced? Because as lawyers, if you do not come out to advise stakeholders on how the rules should be enforced, they may be enforced arbitrarily, they may be enforced discriminatory, they may not be enforced at all, and the moment the environment is put in danger, you and I are in trouble. We cannot claim to be brothers and sisters if we do not care for each other. How do we care for each other? We must care for the environment we live in. So as lawyers, we found it key and imperative that we discuss the concept of environmental rule of law during this week of rule of law, and put it to the stakeholders that look here, what is happening in Uganda in terms of environmental degradation, in terms of deforestation, in terms of human activities affecting nature. We must have a look at this. And I know of recent you've had an exchange between the government and the European governments about the environment.
About the same issue,
So that's what inspired us to talk about the environment during this week.
And you've mentioned something that I would like to touch on before we move on. the status right now in Uganda, you say we are being affected by climate change. What are some of those effects that we are already experiencing and probably the Mwananchi is not aware of, that it is caused by climate change?
Mr. Idris, let's for example take an example of what has been happening in Karamoja. Statistics show that over 900 people have died because of famine. The reason is we live on the environment. We all eat food, we all use air to breathe. This is from the environment. Now, the death in Karamoja could be as a result of failure to use the environment sustainably. Now, any death of a Ugandan, be it one Ugandan, but now we're talking about 900 Ugandans dying because of famine. We have over 200,000 who are vulnerable. So 900 could have died, but we are going to have more numbers dying. So the question is, how do we use the environment to prevent such death? You know what has been happening in Bududa, the eastern part of Uganda? Floods. They have never happened before. What is causing this? I come from the western part of the country. When I'm going home, I pass by a place called Ruera on Masaka Road. Yeah. I've seen people growing rice in what used to be a fishing area.
Yes.
We have had communities fighting with Uganda Wildlife Authority over land occupied by national parks. We've had wild animals attacking humans. Now we have a project going on in Western Uganda, the oil and petroleum project. It's affecting the environment, it's affecting the people. We need to look at whether the laws have been complied with to make sure that these activities which affect the environment do not affect the environment in a manner that me and you will be held liable. Yeah. Because it may be us or the generations to come. And the concept of the environment is use the environment in a manner that even the future generation is able to live on earth peacefully and have a life. So in Uganda we have various human activities, deforestation. We have land fragmentation has caused its own issues. Farming, there is pressure. We've seen farmers burning bushes to grow crops. So these activities are responsible for environmental degradation, but we have the laws which should be governing these activities. So we call upon stakeholders
to wake up.
To wake up.
Moses, do you think society is looking at earning a little bit of cash today and forgetting about the effects of tomorrow in terms of climate change?
Idris, we live in a society, and we are all alive to what is happening. We can't deny the fact that there are extreme levels of poverty and several human circumstances that that force the day-to-day, the Ugandans to involve themselves in some of these illegal activities. But you see, ultimately, we must always find a middle ground. So we believe that the laws are there, and very good laws. We've got to give that to the state. We have very good laws on the environment. My brother here will give you a list of all the laws. Our biggest problem as a country is enforcement. And our call is not just to the public, it's also to the stakeholder, the key stakeholder, the number one stakeholder, which is government, the three arms of government. The executive, the legislature, and the judiciary. That we have the laws, and we thank government for that, but enforcement is still a problem. And there are also instances of selective enforcement. You find that, well, I know some people get permits to reclaim wetlands, but other people also, when the community tries to reclaim, it's a problem. So there are also concerns over the double enforcement, the double enforcement. But I know there is a legal way of reclaiming, let's say, wetland through permits from NEMA. But also, increasingly, you've seen that enforcement of the law is also selective. And those are some of the things that we need to discuss. If there is a law, let it be implemented across the board, the same, for all Ugandans, irrespective of their social status. So I believe most people have taken survival beyond conserving the environment for the rest of us.
Isaac, I'll come to you. What are some of the rules and laws that are in place to actually protect the environment from these perpetrators?
As has always been said, Uganda always has a wealth of laws. We have a number of them, among others our own constitution under Article 39, which provides for a clean and healthy environment. It's a right of every Ugandan. We have the National Environment Act number 5 of 2019. We have the Uganda Wildlife Act. We have the Mining Act. It has been amended. We have the Water Act. We have the National Forestry and Tree Planting Act. We have the National Environmental Audit regulations. We have the Waste Management regulations. So many laws regulating the environment. Then we have the international protocols, which Uganda is a signatory to. All these laws regulate the use of the environment. And maybe to put it further, in its vision of 2040, Uganda affirms the attainment of green and clean environment through sustainable utilization of the environment and natural resources. And NEMA is implementing this through with the support of UNEP. And if you've been observant, NEMA has tried to enforce some of these laws. But our question is always, are they being enforced equitably? Are people treated equally? Are the citizens taking concern of the environment? Because most often you'll see people on TV saying that Saba government tuyambe. You know, the law in Uganda allows citizens to enforce their rights through public interest litigation. Uganda State has always done this. Even lawyers in their private practices have always taken an interest in protecting the environment. So the laws are there. The discussion is as to whether they are being enforced the way they should be, and as to whether the enforcement will lead to sustainable use of the environment are the issues we are going to be discussing this week.
In August 2021, that is 14th August, the President asserted the National Climate Change Act 2021, which you have mentioned. Moses, what provisions does this act give, and how is it regulating climate change in Uganda?
Well, when you look at the provisions of the Climate Change Act, they show you there are various provisions which we may not have an opportunity to discuss at this point. But if you look at the Climate Change Act, which we have a copy of, and you see the provisions, it goes a long way in explaining what he has just said. That our own government, our own president, His Excellency, assented to the Climate Change Act just last year. Because of all the national and international concerns over the environment. We as a country are signatories to various protocols on climate change, on reduction of emissions. It all led to several things. It extends even to URA's policy on reducing on the old cars that we're exporting. There are various levies, environmental levies levied onto old cars. So we have been part of a global discussion which led to the enactment of the Climate Change Act. And we, as a country, have also undertaken to go green, to promote the use of clean energy, and also the sustainable use of the environment, which concept we believe is the way forward. You have seen the discussions that are ongoing on the environment, and there are concerns. But government also has a position and saying, okay, we can conserve and extract this energy while still maintaining the environment. So both parties should be listened to. But what is key is that we must find a way of having a sustainable way of extracting our resources, because it has an economic aspect. Right now, the oil and gas is our biggest project. But the environmentalists also have concerns. So if both parties are listened to, we shall be going a long way in enforcing the provisions of the Climate Change Act, which are very deliberate on ensuring that we as a country implement the various provisions of the protocols we've signed as the world goes into sustainable and clean energy in the long run. So I believe that with the enactment of the Climate Change Act, we can go a long way that way. I may not be in position to go through the various provisions of the environment, of the Climate Change Act right now, but we can get another opportunity and discuss every detail of the Climate Change Act.
Yeah, under the same act, Uganda is now part of the Paris Agreement and the Kyoto Protocol. Basically, these protocols are in place to mitigate climate temperatures that you mentioned earlier on in your introduction, whereby we have been experiencing temperature changes, heat waves, sometimes in the evening. But again, there is the problem that you have mentioned, both of you, is enforcement. How is Uganda Law Society, and I'll question you, Isaac, how is Uganda Law Society enforcing or advising government or regulating the law enforcers to actually put these things in action? Because at the end of the day, you said, if the climate is affected, you and I are affected, or even our children, grandfathers, etc. So what are you doing to make sure?
As I mentioned earlier on, members of the Uganda Society, in their individual capacities, are doing a lot through public interest litigation. Even Uganda Society itself has a department on strategic litigation. Now, through that department, we usually litigate on key aspects which affect the rule of law and, among others, the environment. Then also, through initiatives like this, the Rule of Law Week, we intervene. As I mentioned, our core mandate is advisory to government, then protection and defense of rule of law. So we advise government. We usually advise key stakeholders. Even when legislations are being made, Uganda Society is supposed to be involved. We advise the legislature on what we consider to be the key aspects to be put in our legislations. So it is an obligation of Uganda Society to do this, but also it is an obligation of each and every Ugandan, because as society we can do much. We may advise, we may engage in public interest litigation, we may do strategic litigation on key areas for purposes of protecting the environment, but we want to awaken all Ugandans and tell them, look here, you have a right to a clean and healthy environment. But also you have an obligation to make sure that you keep the environment clean and safe, both for yourself and for the future generations. Of recent, we have so many diseases, cancer, and doctors say that these diseases come as a result of the way we use the environment, the food we eat, the lifestyles we live. We all walk on ground. So as the society, we are saying it is an obligation of every Ugandan to ensure that the environment is used sustainably, that whoever violates the laws regulating the use of the environment is punished as per the law, that there is access to courts of justice, that every Ugandan can afford to litigate, access court, and protect the environment. We advise government to make sure that all the key stakeholders who are charged with an obligation of protecting the environment are engaged. You will find, for example, NEMA, National Environmental Management Authority, is not closely working with local authorities. So you find in a village X, the community is degrading the environment, and maybe because of manpower or financing, NEMA is not aware. By the time it wakes up, a forest is gone. I've heard people saying, I've not personally seen it or visited Mavira. People are saying that on the road.
No, it is.
You see Mavira?
It is a fact, and we've done even stories here at NTV that people are cutting down forests in Mavira forest.
You know, so, and people are saying it is an obligation of NEMA to protect Mavira. No, it is an obligation of every Ugandan to protect Mavira. When we had the COVID, a Ugandan professor discovered a remedy using local herbs, and they are got from forests. So it's not Mavira. It's not NEMA to protect Mavira for us. It's us Ugandans to protect.
But then, Isaac, it would go back to the support that an individual, as myself, is going to get. If I see an investor building a factory in a swamp, how far can I go as an individual?
Now that's where Uganda society comes in, and that's what we are trying to put to Ugandans. We are saying, Ugandans, you have a right to proceed to court and petition for protection of the environment. Ugandans, you have a right to approach stakeholders and engage them. We shouldn't leave this obligation to NEMA, because Ugandans are bigger than NEMA. It may not be everywhere all the time. So, as a law society, as I earlier on told you, our obligation is to advise, our obligation is to protect and defend the rule of law. And we are saying...
Isaac, I'll pause you a bit. On that note, advisory, I understand. Protecting. How are you protecting? What actions are you taking as a group of lawyers who know the law? I might not know the law to its full extent, but you are the group of lawyers who actually even put down these laws. How are you protecting? What actions are you taking? Because you mentioned an example of an individual probably going to court, but I will need a lawyer. So you, as lawyers, what have you done?
As lawyers, as I told you earlier on, we've done a lot. Through our individual members, they have been going to court, taking to court petitions. Uganda Society has been engaging different stakeholders. We've engaged Parliament. When the law was being enacted, Uganda Society was engaged. And even now, what we are doing in this week, we are still engaging Ugandans. So when you're doing advocacy, people may not see in the open what you're doing, but behind closed doors, you're doing a lot. And as a society, I can guarantee you, we are doing a lot engaging stakeholders. We are advising government. We are advising NEMA. NEMA has lawyers. We are now advising even Ugandans, telling them, look here, you have a right to protect the environment. Let no one lie to you that you cannot go to court even as an individual. By the way, you may not even need a lawyer for you to access justice.
Indeed. Well, if you have just joined us, we are having a dialogue on human-induced climate change and the possible remedies. And this dialogue is brought to you by Uganda Law Society. You can be part of the conversation. Just go to our social media platforms. That is NTV Uganda on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. Or look out for myself, Idris Matusegawa, or Uganda Law Society social media platforms, and give your comment and contribution. Well, we are taking a short break. We shall be right back. Do not move away.
It's time to believe and win with Coca-Cola and FIFA World Cup. Simply buy any Coca-Cola, Fanta, Sprite, Stoney, or Novida 300 milliliter glass bottle. Check for your unique code under the cap and send your code to 6688 to participate for free and stand a chance to win a trip to the FIFA World Cup in Qatar. TVs, decoders, phones, and airtime are also up for grabs. Believe and win big. Hashtag believing is magic. T's and C's apply.
It hasn't been easy to find the right diaper to protect Selasie's delicate skin. After trying many diapers, Pampers proved to be the best for my baby. I tested it myself. I placed Pampers and an ordinary diaper under clear bowls with a hole in the middle. I poured 1 cup of water in each diaper. I saw that Pampers absorbed 2 times faster. So almost no wetness can be felt on my baby's skin. I only trust Pampers for my baby. Go try it yourself.
Become the champion. Get your Predator Energy drink today. The official energy drink partner of Liverpool FC. Predator Energy. Zukuka.
Well, good morning and welcome back to our dialogue on human-induced climate change. And we are trying to find out some of those remedies that can help the future and today. And in studio, I am with Isaac Atkunda and Moses Okwalinga from Uganda Law Society. And I'll go to Moses. Before the break, we were talking about some of the legislative acts that are in place to help and regulate climate change in Uganda. Just give us a highlight and probably a brief on some of those.
Okay, thank you, moderator. My colleague Isaac here listed a number of acts, and we may not have enough time to go through them. I would specifically limit myself to the Climate Change Act. And give a few highlights of the Climate Change Act.
Yes.
It's a recent act which was enacted in 2021. And when you look at the act, it's largely putting in place and implementing our obligations under the various international instruments, the Kyoto Protocol, the Paris Agreement that you've mentioned. So the act is largely a replica or domesticalizing our obligations under the various protocols. And with it comes a number of things. Just slightly, an overview. It creates a unit within the ministry to specifically program for climate change deliberately to ensure that all the conditions that are in the various protocols are met over a period of time, not immediately, to see if its emissions, how has Uganda reduced its emissions to the required standards, what are we doing in terms of programming the various ministries to cut on aspects that bring emission. So all that has been brought into the law and tasked, and the law has tasked the ministry to carry that out, which hasn't been there before. We haven't had a Climate Change Act. It has also provided a mandate for government to budget for such processes. Such, if there are programs to be run, government has to deliberately budget for aspects to reduce the negative effects of climate change, which is a very good positive. Monitoring. It has increased on monitoring of activities that are affecting the climate. It goes as far as, let's say, it dedicates Chapter 3 to mechanisms and conditions which you can participate in. So it also gives government an opportunity to regulate that, okay, this activity will increase emissions, this activity will not increase emissions, which is a positive. Chapter 4 goes as far as even giving a criteria for measuring emissions. So then it gives you an opportunity to measure how are we doing as a country on emissions, which is very progressive. So it mandates government deliberately monitor how emissions are, so that you can, it puts government to account on how we are doing vis-a-vis our obligations under the various protocols. Chapter 5, I'm going to the chapters, yes. The institutional arrangements that are in place, the departments responsible, and outlines the obligations. So it has also increased the number of people being placed into the various ministries responsible for climate change, and each person is tasked. When you look at the Act, it's a very progressive form of legislation, which makes us as a country deliberately focus on reducing the negative effects of climate change.
Oh, wow.
That's what I would briefly say about the Act.
Isaac, anything to add on that?
Maybe just what I would add is that the government has deliberately started efforts to adapt and mitigate climate change. And there has been continuous purpose-aimed programs encouraging people to focus on the use of alternative sources of energy, like solar, instead of relying on firewood. Because if you move around the country, most people rely on firewood. So the government has encouraged Ugandans to switch to the use of solar. Then recycling of products which are hazardous to the environment. Then there has been an effort to encourage people to plant trees. And if you've been observant, the Ministry of Agriculture has been encouraging Ugandans to sustainably use land when planting crops. That's why sometimes even people are warned when there are to be climate changes. So the government is doing its part in trying to encourage Ugandans to protect the environment, following the laws which are in place. But I think the challenge has been because of population pressure, because of the numbers. People are finding no any other alternative means of survival apart from relying on the earth. So in trying to find means of survival, they end up carrying out activities which affect the environment. So, and now one of the biggest tasks is to make sure that you put it in people that, look here, the environment is for the benefit of all of us. It's not for government or for NEMA to make sure that when you're planting crops, you use methods or use pesticides which do not affect the soil, for example. So through these enactments, as Moses has gone through them, the government has tried to enforce the concept of sustainable use and management of the environment. But we are saying we can still do more, because in the coming 50 years, unless we address the challenge of environmental degradation, we are all headed for trouble. I don't know whether you and me will still be alive now.
Hopefully.
Yeah, I think I'll be like 90 years then.
Well, so the Queen died beyond 90, so the possibility is there.
So, and I would like to borrow a quotation from Pope Paul II. He said that the earth will not continue to offer us its harvest except with faithful stewardship. We cannot say we love the land and then take steps to destroy it for use for the future generation. So we are saying, let all the stakeholders apply the law without discrimination. If it shouldn't matter who is degrading the environment. If you're stopping Ugandans in Lubiji from use of that swamp, you should also stop a certain company which is destroying Rwera.
Indeed.
Because people are asking these questions. Okay, you're saying we shouldn't
do this,
live in Lubigi, but we are seeing a company X destroying a wetland. People are saying, but the oil pipeline is passing through national parks, it's passing through valleys. So what stops us from also
doing the same?
Doing the same. So we are calling upon government, we are calling upon all the stakeholders to make sure that the law is applied equitably. And in applying the law equitably, the law should be fair enough. And by the way, to go strictly on rule of law, sometimes you may have a law which is discriminatory, but it is law. So sometimes it is not sufficient to apply the law. I give an example of the law on apartheid in South Africa.
Yeah.
It was discriminatory, but it was
the law.
The law. And a law enforcement officer will tell you that I'm actually enforcing
the law.
The law. To us as Uganda Society, we are saying that is not sufficient. The law should be fair. It should treat all stakeholders equitably. And we come from the concept of rule of law as developed by Justice Kwak in the UK. It's where traditionally the belief was in the rule of the divine, and the justice said no. Law should be fair. The law should treat everyone equally, and the law should actually be enforced. You see, you will know the importance of rule of law when there is actually no rule of law. So if we do not apply the laws we have in protecting our environment, if the stakeholders do not apply these laws with strictness they deserve, we are headed for trouble. As I've already mentioned, 900 people dying in one region, Karamoja region. Now imagine if what we're experiencing in Karamoja region happened in other regions. We would have 1 million people dying because of hunger, 1 million people dying because of floods, and we shouldn't reach there, because we can talk about other things, maybe democracy, human rights, etc., when we are alive, when we are living, and for us
not when you're dead.
For us to live, we must not harm our environment. So our concern as Uganda Society for this week is rule of law in the use of the environment. Let whoever uses the environment out of the law be punished. It's usually called the polluter pays principle. You pollute the environment, you pay. Make sure that government projects are carried out in conformity with the law. If you're going to build an oil pipeline, ensure that the laws relating to carrying out of environmental audits, environmental impact assessments are complied with. Make sure that if the pipeline is passing in a national park, the ecosystem there is not disrupted. And it is our obligation. Of course, sometimes as a society we may be curtailed by funds because we may not have enough funds to inspect each and every entity, to inspect every part of Uganda to see what is going on. But I think Moses is going to provide even our toll-free line as Uganda Society. Ugandans can call this toll-free line and inform Uganda Society of what is happening in their regions. And also, as I earlier on told you, Ugandans, if you think you do not have money to hire a lawyer, you have a right as an individual to access court and sue whoever you feel is destroying the environment. So, whoever uses the environment must use it in a way that does not harm the other. So this week, that is our main focus. And on Friday, if you have time, you could also attend and
We
listen
shall-
to our speakers. Intentionally, I do not want to curtail what my speakers are going to say on Friday.
Indeed. But before we get into that annual rule of law week, Moses, I would like to come to you. Isaac has mentioned how a little bit of what government is doing. What are some of these other stakeholders that Uganda Law Society can work with to actually combat climate change in Uganda?
Thank you. We, as a society, have been very deliberate with on climate, climate change. I would give you a few examples. Early this year, we had a partnership with the National Forest Authority. We met the leadership of the authority, and we discussed some of the cases, public interest. We are litigant in the Bugoma Forest case over the degradation of the forest. But we met NFA, and we discussed ways of partnering, how the two institutions can work together. And it later zeroed down to an intervention where the NFA gladly offered tree seedlings to the membership of the Law Society. I personally was offered 2,000 free tree seedlings, and the offer was extended to, so far they have given over 100 lawyers. So this is an institution of government mandated to plant trees, and it's reaching out to the membership, saying, okay, one of your ways contribution to society is plant trees, which has been a positive. We have also been advocating throughout our platforms with institutions of government, NEMA, NFA, the ministry, on how some of the concerns regarding environment degradation can be addressed. We have also, given that we have a key mandate to be an advisor to government on the law, we have been part of delegations to Parliament to take part in giving an input. In the ECOP bill, we gave our input. Climate change bill, when it was still a bill, we did give our input on what we feel as the Law Society should be implications, should be aspects within the law that will respect and uphold the rule of law. And a number of them have been taken. Definitely there are some of them that were dropped, but a number of them were taken, which is a plus. We also have an open door policy with all government entities. We view government as a partner whom we can constantly engage on issues affecting the rule of law. We have also supported our membership that has worked with various in public interest litigation. Because you see, as the Law Society, we also have to use the law as a tool to create change.
Yes.
So we have been supporting the membership that has been undertaking public interest litigation on the environment. We have also, as an institution, taken a case to court. And we shall continue engaging the key stakeholders. That's to mention but a few.
And what are some of the responses that probably you could recommend for other stakeholders and even individual Ugandans?
I would put that in twofold. One, I would first go to government. Government has the biggest duty bearer because government is entrusted to run this country and the resources on behalf of us, the citizens. I would advise government to, well, there's a lot of narrative. Oil extractions has been a touchy subject. So sometimes it takes away the real issues that can be debated because it's our biggest project. The prospects of oil are very many. We as the legal profession are going to benefit immensely through services, but also we can't take away some of the issues that are being mentioned by some of the critics. So we believe that government should be in position to listen to stakeholders. It's our government. They need to listen to us and the rest of people who are saying, well, there are these concerns, how do we deal with them? And I'm glad that the team at the Petroleum Authority and UNOC have been very active. I've been seeing them on the media, sensitizing the public that you see, this is what we are doing. The number of people to be compensated is not that big, it's a much smaller number. These are the safeguards we put in place. That's what we need. So that the public is also informed on what is government doing. Government shouldn't take it for granted that we know. Some people don't know.
Indeed.
So we believe that government should invest more in sensitizing, while also working with the partners, sensitizing the populations on key issues regarding the environment, climate change. They should also put more money into publicity. One of the biggest issues we have suffered as a country is we don't invest a lot in publicizing the good of this country. We let everyone else dictate the narrative of the negatives. And sometimes it has cost us opportunities beyond the region. Government should be deliberate in investing into publicizing government policies and the good it brings. I know that we have a lot of collaboration with the Ministry of Energy, and we are constantly in discussions with them on the various issues they're doing with extractives. We as the Law Society have a project funded by the Canadian Bar Association on extractives, the SAD project. And we are working in the oil-rich areas of Bulisa and Hoima on ensuring that ownership rights are protected. There is adequate compensation. We teach women, we empower women and the various groups to defend. We actually even support finance lawyers, pro bono lawyers in the region to defend people who are facing injustices in the oil-rich region.
All right.
So we believe that if government does more, and if government also puts more money into engaging the key
society,
stakeholders, including the Law Society, then we can have a more informed public to be able to protect the environment. Then finally, the public as well. The public has to look at the bigger picture. We all have survival needs, but ultimately we need to have an environment, a clean and healthy environment that we live for our children. All of us have families here.
Indeed. And Isaac is expecting to live for another 50 years.
Another 50
So sure. It is in his biggest interest to do this. Isaac, I'll come to you as we wrap up this dialogue. The annual Rule of Law Week started 10th, ending on 14th. Just give us a briefer scope for the viewers who have been watching and what to expect, and probably just tease a little bit about the symposium. I know you don't want to tease, but tease it.
Maybe before I go there,
yes.
My colleague, our CEO, has talked about the responsibility of government.
Yes.
But I wanted to talk about the responsibility of companies, corporations. One of the modern corporate governance principles is about environmental protection. That it's no longer, before the idea was the interest of a business is business. You do business to make profit. Do not care about any other activity. But in modern times, one of the core obligations of every business is the social responsibility to the public. And the key element of this is protecting the environment. How do you manage your waste? How do you run a company without polluting the environment? How do you protect the environment you're operating in as a company? You remember the case of 2011, which was between Mr. Nyakana Amoti and NEMA, where he had been given 21 days to demolish a building he had erected in an area NEMA considered protected. The matter went up to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court emphasized the principle of polluter pays principle. And the restoration order was issued and enforced. So, to companies out there which are unknowingly or knowingly polluting the environment, The laws are there. You are supposed to pay. It shouldn't matter which company it is. The law should apply to everyone equally, regardless of who you are.
Yes.
And so it's not about government, but also corporations and us as individuals.
As
now,
individuals.
about our rule of law week, the CEO has been deeply involved. He could give a better highlight.
Okay, Moses, what do we expect? What are some of those activities that are going to be highlighted throughout until Friday?
Okay, thank you. Well, the climax is a symposium, which is the end.
Yes.
Of the week, not of the process, which is the end of the week.
Yes.
And we shall have a symposium at Imperial. It's open to your key stakeholders, and we shall have a membership physically present and online, where we hope to discuss. We are going to have a panel of experts on the various, it's a very rich combination of speakers, panelists, and we hope to have a very lively discussion. So we would be glad if Nation Group join us.
We shall be there.
TV join us. But we, during the region, during the week, we have also done activities regionally. We have radio talk shows in
different
regions. We have in the north, we have in the west, in western Uganda and Ibara, we have in Gulu, we have in Arua, we also have in Jinja, and where we are discussing the environment, which is our theme this year, climate change, and how it's a rule of law issue. So that we create debate on this very important
and keep the awareness alive. Yes,
and keep the awareness alive. We also, as a law society, through our rule of law department, are deliberate on the rule of law through institutions of higher learning. We have rule of law clubs that we've planted in universities and secondary schools. And one of the reasons we are doing that is we believe that if someone begins practicing the rule of law at an earlier stage, then definitely they say that the values you teach a child, they will keep them even in their adulthood. So we believe that if we begin sensitizing the universities, the schools on the values of the rule of law, then we shall have better citizens than maybe our generation.
Will be safer.
Will be safer. So we've also worked with about 4 universities to have activities emerge, sensitizations, debate in their various spaces on the rule of law, so they create debate on our theme this year. And
lastly, the toll-free number that Isaac mentioned, you can give it to the viewers. Sorry. As Moses looks for the toll-free number, please, you can keep up with the conversation. Just go to our social media platforms, that is NTV Uganda on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube, and also look out for Uganda Law Society social media platforms, that is all platforms, and look out for myself, Idris Matu, and keep the conversation. Remember, climate change affects you and I today and tomorrow. Moses, do you have that number?
Yes, I do.
Perfect.
Our viewers, we have our toll-free lines, which are 0800 100 150. I repeat, 0800 100 150, and the same number ends with 51. The same number.
All right. Thank you, gentlemen, for this very important dialogue, and we hope the conversation keeps on going even next year until we can combat this issue. Well, viewers,
let me end with this.
All right.
There is a quote.
Just 30 seconds.
There is a quote by Wendell Berry.
Okay.
The earth is what we all have in common. We shouldn't live on it as if we have somewhere else to go. It is our obligation to protect it.
Indeed.
Thank you.
Well, thank you for keeping with us, and to continue the conversation again, go to our social media platforms, that is on YouTube, Twitter, look out for NTV Uganda, and you shall be able to watch if you have missed, or even comment and contribute on the way forward towards combating this global change, global problem that is climate change. I've been Idris Matu Segawa. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.